big balls from Hugh Freeze on the recruiting trail. He flips a 5-star wide receiver from Alabama to Auburn over the weekend. Here's how it looked, right? Forrester has the video. Nope, Rockstar has the video. Thought we discussed this. Cut number 7, if we can.
I think Scott say we did discuss this, Jim. Yes.
Here's Perry Thompson making his announcement, his flip from Alabama to Auburn, and Hugh Freeze gets thrown into a swimming pool. If you missed it over the weekend, this is part of Big Cat Weekend. Something that started way back at Auburn. Hugh Freeze keeps it rolling. Here is the big 5-star wide receiver from Foley. Could it be Auburn in Hugh Freeze's Julio Jones? Maybe. Here's the big announcement.
The next 3 to 4 years, I'll be at Auburn University. Yeah! Put him in the pool!
So apparently Auburn just won a crew championship. I know what you do.
How nervous would you have been if that was you that were throwing in the pool?
Oh, somebody would have to come in and get me.
Sunk like a stone.
Boy,
Well, I mean,
he's killing it. Good week for
he
Hugh.
is.
right.
He is getting after it in recruiting.
And now KJ Bolden, who's a 5-star safety, says Auburn is one of their final of his final 2. Announcement coming soon. His final 5 was Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, Florida State, and Ohio State. So of those 4, it's down to one other in Auburn. If you believe what he said this Big Cat Weekend, he's from Beaufort, Georgia. So I assume you would assume that it's down to Auburn and Georgia. If not, maybe Auburn and Alabama. But it's Auburn and somebody, another 5-star recruit. Doesn't surprise anybody that Hugh Freeze can recruit, though, right?
No, not at all. But flipping guys from Alabama to Auburn, I mean, that's a huge deal.
Well, I mean,
obviously having 7 300 ESPN 300 commitments now in that class, I mean, that's pretty incredible. And it just shows you a couple of things. He can recruit, but it looks like Bryan Harsin was a little lazy.
Well, I think Gus Malzahn, too. People love just to pin this on Harsin, but you got to look at the end of the Gus Malzahn era. He was in cruise control recruiting as well. Auburn hasn't had this type of recruiting in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, but
it's not just 2 years.
You can say that Harsin was lazy, but in this NIL world, you got to have everybody pulling in the right direction. Would Bryan Harsin, if he had the Auburn money people behind him, could he have done better? Maybe he was lazy. Maybe Gus could have been better if it was the NIL era, right? If he was paying, top dollar to get recruits. What is a fact is that Hugh Freeze was always a good recruiter. Auburn has money people, and they're all on the same page now, which is where you've got to be in this era of college football. So
I get it, but it's hard to believe that they weren't on the same page because Harsin was only there for, a blip on the radar.
Yeah, but he was not the hire by those people.
They never wanted him.
Yeah, those people didn't want him hired.
I get that, but at the same time, your love for Auburn football should be more than the guy that is hired,
It should be, yes, you're right.
That was the question we asked.
Frequently it's not, yeah.
That was, when I remember asking that exact question. At some point, the boosters have to decide whether they love Auburn football more than they love their power to control who the head coach is. They don't have to make that decision now because they got their guy and they're all on the same page. And this is what you can do at Auburn when everybody's pulling in the same direction.
I remember when Lane Kiffin was hired in Oxford, and I think it was Feinbaum that said this is the worst nightmare for Nick Saban. This is the guy he doesn't want in Oxford. I think more so this is the guy you don't – if you're Alabama, this is the guy you don't want in Auburn. Because he's going to turn this thing around quickly.
Well, he's had success on the field against Nick Saban, and he was really good. I mean, Kim Dichie and those guys. I mean, you look at the ones that went to the NFL that he recruited at Ole Miss; they were pretty talented guys there. I think he still holds the record for the best recruiting class in Ole Miss history.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah,
yeah. And
where's this class now for the 2024 class for Auburn? It's got to be up there.
Yeah,
right?
I'll pull it up on 24/7. But Brown, I mean, this is a guy that. You go back to the Mark Ingram, Julio Jones class for Nick Saban, how important that was. This is a big 5-star guy who just happens to also be at wide receiver, also from Foley.
Well, I mean, there's no doubt. Yeah, Foley is an interesting connection. Auburn, to answer your question on 3, is 15th right now with those 2 5-stars in the last week. And again, that I'm glad you brought that up because this highlights Hugh Freeze's challenge, right? You would say Hugh Freeze is on a heater right now. Well, he's 15th. I mean,
where is he in the SEC? 7?
And Georgia is 1, Florida is 3, Alabama is 4, Tennessee is 9, Texas A&M is 12, LSU is 13. I mean,
So they're 7th.
yeah, I mean and they're not done either. None of those teams are done. But again, it highlights how difficult it is to succeed in this conference. Like Hugh Freeze is on an Auburn recruiting heater like they haven't had in a single week in quite a while. And still, you see the uphill battle you're fighting to try to close the gap between some of the schools that have passed Auburn over the last few years.
That's life in the SEC,
It is.
right?
It is life in the SEC. Once you fall
Always
behind.
has, always will be.
That's right. And once you fall behind, it is so difficult to catch up. I mean, you just have to have an extraordinary effort to catch up. Alabama, to your point, with Nick Saban, had fallen way, way, way behind. Nick Saban came in and killed it in recruiting, and it still took a couple of years to catch up. Kirby Smart, Georgia had not fallen as far behind. Mark Richt was far from, asleep at the wheel, but they weren't quite where they are now, and it took Kirby a little bit to catch up. And those guys recruited on an elite level.
Yeah, and the key is you're going to have to hold these guys, too.
No, sure, that's anybody, yeah.
All the way until you get to December signing day.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia and Alabama aren't just going to wave the flag on these guys.
That's right, and
yeah.
that's why, it's important that you have some success on the field this year. If you look like a train wreck on the field, some of these guys could be like, ooh.
I just don't see that. I think there was dissension, and obviously we don't know what's going on in the locker room. I think there was dissension because Nick Saban runs a program a different way, and a lot of those guys, it was weeding those guys out. I think for Hugh Freeze, he's more of a player's coach. So I think it will be easier to navigate the first year if that makes any sense. Like, I don't think they're going to have super success this year. I think they'll be a surprise team. They'll beat somebody they shouldn't.
That's right.
But I think year 2, I mean, you look at what Kirby, you guys brought up Kirby, played for a national championship. Nick Saban was undefeated going into the SEC championship game. And, I mean, I'm not going to be surprised at all if they win 10, maybe 11 games next year.
If you're 8-3 going into the Alabama game, which you host, right? Then that's you've beaten somebody or two teams you probably shouldn't have beaten roster-wise.
Yeah.
And you're 8-3 going into a big weekend that looks great for recruits. You probably can continue to build on that excitement leading up to National Signing Day. So 7-4, 8-3 going into that big weekend that always looks great when you're an Auburn fan down there with your rival coming to town.
That's probably an A season.
Yeah, it's like a great look. The stadium is packed, the buzz of the weekend, the Tiger Walk and all that. It's an easy sell to recruits.